The world experiences another energy crisis due to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The good news is that solar power has become the cheapest source of green energy worldwide, because of China's instrumental role in solar manufacturing. Over the last 2 decades, Chinese state-led industrial policies, such as billions in subsidies and tax breaks for companies involved in solar production, have allowed China to leapfrog over the US, the very inventor of solar photovoltaic technology, to become the world's top solar manufacturer. Solar manufacturing costs in China are 35% lower than in Europe, 20% lower than in the US, and 10% lower than in India. In the 8 years, from 2010 to 2018 alone, the cost of electricity from utility-scale solar photovoltaic projects plunged by 77%, thanks to Chinese manufacturing, while over that period, the world's solar capacity grew at a compound annual growth rate of nearly 43%. However, China's dominance over the global solar supply chain could hinder the world's clean energy shift. The world will be almost completely dependent on China to supply the critical building blocks for solar panel production through 2025. Annual solar capacity additions need to quadruple to 630 gigawatts by 2030 to meet the roadmap to net zero emissions by 2050. As countries ramp up their green energy capacity, the concentration of solar manufacturing in China means that supply chains will be further strained in order to meet the growing demand. European imports of Chinese solar cell and module parts, for instance, surged 127% in May, compared to the same time last year, as Europe looks to install 600 gigawatts of solar by 2030 and curb its reliance on Russian energy. China's share in the key manufacturing stages of solar panels, such as the mining and melting of polysilicon, the main raw material used to make photovoltaic cells for solar panels, eclipses 80% of the industry. This figure will grow to over 95% in the next 3 years, as under-construction manufacturing and processing facilities come online. The International Energy Agency, IEA, is calling on countries to diversify their sources of solar panels and increase their own manufacturing capacity to mitigate the supply chain, trade, and geopolitical risks of being too dependent on Chinese solar. Polysilicon prices have skyrocketed in the last 18 months, reaching an 11-year high in June, as demand for solar overtakes existing manufacturing capacity, leading to a slowdown in renewables projects. China is spending billions to boost polysilicon production, which will help reduce supply chain bottlenecks but keep the world reliant on China's solar supply chain. The country accounts for over 80% of the world's solar-grade polysilicon production. The US, meanwhile, is trying to strengthen its own solar supply chain. The Biden administration says the country is on track to triple domestic solar manufacturing capacity by 2024. Legislation such as the America Competes Act would provide $3 billion in funding for America's solar manufacturers through to 2026. If the rest of the world doesn't step up, the IEA warns, the green transition will be largely in China's hands, and no one player should have all that power.